Hey, this is Richie Marufo from the Barbed Wire Open Mic Series, aka BWOMs, and you're listening to the Paso Creators Podcast Show. If you haven't already, make sure to follow them on Instagram, YouTube, and other social media. Without further ado, here's the show. Check it.
Hey, my name is Eric Bowers, and I'm the art director at KVIA and freelancer and a lifelong creative technologist. And I want to talk today about just creative technology, how I use my art in it, and how I see things here in El Paso.
Hey, awesome, Eric. Thanks so much for being on the show today. Just give myself a quick intro. Hey guys, my name is Isaac Hernandez. I'm the host today for the Paso Creators Podcast Show. I'm very excited to have you here because especially the whole technology and the digital space that we're in right now, especially the ones that we're in right now, it's kind of important to talk about, especially for artists. So I kind of want to see your view on all of that and everything too. But just, to give yourself a little bit of background, just for anybody who doesn't know who you are yet or what you've done, just give yourself like a 2-3 minute introduction of who you are, what you do, and what got you moving into that.
Yeah, sure. So, from as long as I can remember, I've been into computers, and I think that was probably back when computers were invented, if I'm thinking accurate. But to take that, I was always into art, always into music, and combining those things together with using computers. As I saw technology changing over the years, new avenues have been opening up, and it's just becoming more and more exciting. So. Yeah. And that's.
And what got you into that? Did you always want to be like that computer guy, or or an artist, or what got you really sparked into that?
I'd say I was in second grade, and we got introduced to computers for the first time in school. And I went home, and I was just so excited about it. And my sister, who was 2 years younger than me in kindergarten, was like, "Yeah, we got to play with computers too." And I was so upset. And I cried. I was like, that's not fair.
Yeah.
By the time she's my age, she's gonna be already 2 years advanced.
Yeah.
So I anecdotally, I've tried to spend the rest of my life catching up with her.
Yeah. And so you're not from here, right? You're from New York, right? So what was the first, stepping stone in your career of you actually got to do what you wanted to do in the arts and technology world, and how was that for you? Just getting into that.
Yeah, so I was actually New Jersey, so pretty close to New York. In fact, a lot of my career I commuted to New York. But my first job was actually doing illustrations using CAD to do patents. So if somebody designed something, I would take whatever that design is and draw it from the front, the side, all those things that you learn in mechanical drawing. But we were doing it on a computer, and we were actually, I think, the first company in the country to actually be doing this on computer and printing it out and that kind of thing. So that's where I got my inroad to this, and it was cool. I eventually got to the point where the 90s were kind of wrapping up, and we got to that era where everybody has a website.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And my boss had this idea. He's like, we were kind of the first out that was doing this on the computer.
And that was the first time that websites were coming up and everything too.
The early stages. So this was 1999,
yeah.
That area where it was just the Wild West.
So how was that whole area of getting introduced to the internet and the computers and making websites? How explosive was that at the time for businesses and everything like that?
Yeah, and that was exactly it. It was at that point that you started all of a sudden seeing the end of a Pepsi commercial. You'd see visit Pepsi.com, and it was whoa, this is not just a fad. Companies are trying to push people to this. And so my boss came to me and he said, we were the first doing computer illustrations, but I think other companies are going to beat us to getting stuff online. Yeah. And I can't really afford to hire a company to do this for us. So I'll just keep paying you. Can you learn how to do it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, sure.
So how did you learn how to do it?
Yeah, exactly. So a few different ways. Back then there were no YouTube videos to look up. And stuff
YouTube was fresh out there too. Yeah.
So it was just, I would read books and I would experiment. I'd try this out, do that. Eventually, he got some money where he was able to hire in one guy who spent 2 days with me, just building what became the framework of our website.
Yeah.
And this website was made so that once we did these patents, they can go up and they can securely be pulled down by the lawyers, and they can look at them and then print them out, file them themselves. So we just started saving all this money on FedEx and whatnot. But it was just cool because that opened my mind. My very first project, here I am learning databases, security, all these things.
All this new
and
stuff.
I was I just wanted to learn HTML. Yeah. but no, it actually turned out to be that was probably the launching point that got me, headed
And by learning all that, where did that end up taking you? Like just by, because you didn't expect to learn all that,
Yeah.
but like by learning all that, where did it take you?
So after that, I ended up getting to the point where, the company was like, we can't really afford to have you here anymore. But if you come in just 8 hours a week, we'll keep giving you health insurance.
Okay.
And we'll just pay you in health insurance. And I was like, you know what? That kind of makes sense. So it was at that point that I just started going out and seeing, well, I love design. I want to just keep designing. I want to start doing this. So I just was able to find other freelance clients, not having to worry about my health. And I had this thing that I had heard from somebody, and they basically said, don't ask what the world needs, but ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is more people that have come alive. So I just said, what is it? I love creating. Like, I love that idea of, for a lot of people, it's a blank canvas, or, opening up Ableton or whatever. For me, it's like, opening up Photoshop and what can I do here? Or opening up,
just trying to find experiment different things
3D.
and what you're good at.
And just playing around and seeing where it goes. So.
And so at that point, and the reason I asked that question too was because at that point, everything was fresh for you. Everything was brand new to the world in general, like making websites, internet, everything like that. And how do you compare the two now? Like the whole digital age that we're living in now, social media, those NFT stuff, everything like that, and then how it was back then, and comparing the two and how you've seen it evolve, especially since you went through it all.
Yeah. Well, so from there, what ended up happening is from the HTML thing, I went into Flash. Okay. And Flash at the time was like the hot thing, because now all of a sudden people weren't just looking at websites for information and things like that, but they were like learning to engage with it and play with it and like do these things. And so for me, that brought it to a whole new level. And that, for the first time now, monitors were getting more colors and more resolution, and you're able to, so, and then games were getting more and more intricate and more realistic.
Have you ever developed like a game yourself and all that? Or?
Yeah, so I work in game engines. I wouldn't say I developed game. I've developed like small little games here and there. Like for Dos Equis, we did like a bunch of like mini games and stuff like that back in the day. But for me, like looking at games and just taking game engines in general, that kind of gives you the idea of what Flash was to us back then. It was like, wow, wait, we can make things move using code.
Yeah.
We can make things move using a timeline. We can, make it so that if somebody makes this choice, then this happens. And like, it was just all those kind of mechanics that
being able to control what happens.
Yeah. And then what it ends up doing is it makes people just more engaged and brings them into it. And, and at the time I was doing it for brands, right? So people are spending more time with your brand because they have something interesting to do and getting out of it, entertainment. So, so I mean, like, from learning Flash, I ended up getting a job in New York at a company where there was an agency that had just won America Online as their client, right? Yeah. And it was AOL. And this was actually when AOL was starting to go down, because like Google was coming out and everything was going out.
Amazon and everything.
I would say this was like probably around 2005, 2006, like around there, right? Okay. And so I end up in this room where there's like 30 other freelancers, and we're just all in this room, and the person comes in and says, okay, the client's downstairs. I'm gonna march you guys all in to show them the team that's gonna be working on their project. And she's like, and you all have name tags so that I know what your name is, because she's getting this for the first time. And so we all like kind of walked in there and did that. And so 30 freelancers worked for 3 months, like doing all this campaign for AOL. And coming out of where I came from, this was more money than I even thought I'd ever be able to make. Like, I'm like, I'd be sitting on the subway, like looking around. I'm like, that guy's a lawyer, and I might be making more than him right now. Damn, it's like, it was crazy. No, it really was. I was probably wrong, but to me, it was like, I was like, whole different. It was just eye opening. So the end of that project came. It was after the 3 months, end of the year. We all celebrated, went to the Christmas party, and then they were like, they actually pulled me aside. They said, "We want to keep you here. Who do you want to keep with you?" Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, this is awesome! Like, I could build a team right now." So I named a few people. I was like, "I definitely want these 4 people." One of them didn't accept, but the others did, and we started a team and started going from there. And and that started my New York career. I guess that was like 2006, which lasted until lasted about 8 years until I started my own thing.
And with all that, like, what type of, throughout that whole new coming of different stuff that was happening, what kind of struggles did you jump into that like you had to like kind of face and like get over in order to keep going and, you know, sticking true to those people who like needed you to do something?
Yes, yeah. So I would say like every part of my career, especially during that time when things are coming out and things are new, you didn't have anywhere to go to learn.
Yeah, especially not YouTube at that point.
Yeah, well, no, at this point we did have
yeah.
YouTube. Yeah, I think YouTube came out like right around then, but yeah, the very few and far between, like who's going to teach you, right? Yeah. But it's like you had to learn it on your own or with your group of friends that you had and see if you could figure out these issues in order to get things to the next level. Yeah. We got this project from Sirius Satellite Radio at the time, trying to put together it was basically like something where you put in a type of music you like and it spits out a whole bunch of things. It's like, oh, you probably like this and this and this, and then it gives you a channel list. And they were like, what we want you to do is we want to do this, but we don't have a database to save this for people. But we want people to be able to come back and get their list whenever. And I was just like, wait, what?
You didn't know what the hell was going on. Yeah.
So when we actually did, we figured out a solution for that, which was pretty incredible to be able to do that without a database and without cookies. But that's just like those types of struggles.
Yeah.
But that struggle and figuring that out actually led me to my next job when I started working for a bigger company in New York, and I became their head of their animation.
And when was this? Department. Like at that point,
this
what
was
that?
This was like 2000. I think it was 2009, maybe.
And from that point to like at that 2009, like how did you see things progress at that point? I'm trying to like lead up to like where we're at today.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So let's get it to here. So what ends up happening now is just things are becoming more and more and more immersive. When you immerse yourself into it, like it's like the experiences aren't just something that you do, but it's something that like kind of you become part of, right? Yeah. So with the rise of social media, there was so much importance being put into, okay, how do we make this not an individual experience, but how do we make an experience for everybody who's experiencing it?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then same with, the way, if you look at video games became a lot more multiplayer.
Yeah.
And then so you started to have like these new concepts come out, which were, once people had phones, and you had location-based things where it's like, okay, how can we gamify where people are in the world, right? And that's when you started seeing like Squarespace come out and like things like that, where they started gamifying that. Then you have augmented reality. Okay, how can we take what people see in front of them and put something else there, you know? And now how can we combine those two things together to get Pokemon Go, right? It's
exactly, and how that blew up.
And so everything now is this amalgamation of things where it's like, this was a good idea. This was a good idea. What happens when we mix them together? It's like music.
And it's just evolution. It just evolves.
It's like, here's acid music, here's jazz.
Yeah.
What does acid jazz sound like? So that's really where things are going now. And if you look, you see that Facebook has just changed their name to Meta. Like they're actually really taking this whole Ready Player One world type thing seriously, where they think everybody's going to be walking around with headsets on and seeing
type of thing, and being a part of a digital world
than what they're in. Yeah. So you could see like the dangers to things like that. And you could also see the appeal to things like that. You could see the how brands would want something like that so that they can get people's undivided attention, for a small period of time. But augmented reality, that was something that I started looking at really early on. I would say like around 2010 even. We were pitching it to Exxon, and we had like some ideas that they can use with and even at the time though, we couldn't really figure it out yet because phones didn't have the ability to mix what you saw with the camera with the technology. So we were trying to figure out how to do things using webcams and like that kind of thing. But then eventually, the phone took over and people started coming up with like all these apps. They're like, all right, what? Like I was at Chick-fil-A like years ago and I saw they had a comic book and it's like, oh, download our app and you can see this cow pop off the page on the comic book. And it's like, that is mildly entertaining, but not at all functional. And why do I want to download your app and have another icon on my page? But that's where Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, they're now coming in.
They jumped into that, yeah.
And this is something I've actually gone, I taught a class on this over at UTSA. Too soon? We just lost
Damn,
bro.
Too soon.
But I actually, but the class was really on like, this is where augmented reality was, but now look at it now. Like, you talk to anybody and ask them, do you have Snapchat in your pocket? No, well, if you're over 30, you probably don't, right? But do you have Facebook in your pocket?
Everybody has Facebook.
Do you have Instagram in your pocket? Yeah. Well, then you've downloaded our app already, and brands can now talk to people like using that.
Exactly, yeah.
So, and one of my big habits right now is I got to get out of this mindset of brands, because I don't really do much for brands anymore. Although, probably here and there. Like, the brands pay the bills, but
yeah, because you've also worked with you worked on marketing type of end stuff, right? Like
yeah, so
helping,
most of what I do is marketing end.
So how do you go about that, and then how does the reality world of that, the virtual reality type of world, go into, especially when you worked with ABC and how you built in that whole 3D animation type of stuff? How is that beneficial for them to have?
So it's interesting with ABC, and the whole thing with ABC actually is kind of crazy. So I'm actually their part-time art director there. That's I work there. Significant part of my week is dedicated to ABC, and then the rest is dedicated to my side projects. My first day of work there was actually I had signed the contract on Thursday, and then started on Monday, but between that Thursday and the Monday was the August 3rd shooting. And it was it was crazy. Yeah. So now I walk in, first day of work, like, you can hardly find somebody to show you where your office is.
There's all crazy.
They were there all night. And so I kind of hit the ground running there. And my first project there was actually building the video that they showed at the Memorial Park, or at the park, for these victims. And that was like probably one of the most emotional things that I've gone through, like just seeing what happened there. So I would say that was me knowing that, I think God has me right here, right where I need to be, in this place. And then the following year, I was like, I can't really top this, but what we went through, like that crazy, all of 2020, was just so nuts. And I'm like, man, this has been one crazy year. And I was just like, one day I'm sitting at the desk and I'm like, go daddy. I'm like, onecrazyyear.com. Not taken? I was like, that's nuts. And I bought it right there. And I was like, all right, what am I going to do with this? And kind of like backtracking on there, like my mind is always thinking about like these kind of applications that I can use this technology, but how can I use it? And I had actually built for my 10th anniversary. This was so I was married in 2007. Yeah. So this was in 2017. I had actually built a museum in VR that you're able to go around and just basically you're going from room to room and you're looking at pictures of my family and us through the years, and each of my kids had their own room. Yeah. And in the center room was just me and my wife and like a quote from our wedding song, and then my daughter loved narwhal, so I put a narwhal tank in her room with a narwhal in it and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, this is fantastic. And like so people came to my party, and one at a time I'd put the headset on them. That's crazy. And they'd like enjoy it for like 5 or 10 minutes, and it's like, oh, okay, who's next? Yeah. And I sat there and I thought to myself, like, man, this was good, but to only have one person experience it at a time, like, there's got to be something more that can happen with this. And fast forward to this past year, my mom just turned 70, and I did the same thing for her for 70th. Yeah. But instead of building it where I had to hook it up to my computer and everything, I was like, what if I used real estate software where people do real estate tours? And I just built a museum for her where, the only difference between this and a real estate tour is that I'll create the room and then film these fake rooms, but it'll have all pictures of her friends on it, her family, and then people can tour it like you would tour a new house, like down the street, So I tried that. And then I showed it to my boss at KVIA, and she said, Google just gave us this grant to do something with, what would it take for you to build something like this for us with all the, just as like a wrap up of everything that's happened this year.
Yeah, and so I saw it. Yeah.
And so and then that's where I came up with that. I actually got in touch with a good friend of mine in town, David Figueroa, who he does augmented reality stuff all the time, and told him the idea. I said, this is what I need to do. I said, I could do all the art for this. I can get everything together. I was like, but I need a second pair of hands that can like put this together and do it. And he'd actually just done a tour, similar tour for UTEP of the inside of their Buddhist temple there. He had gone and shot it and done one. So I knew he knew the exact same software. Yeah. So the two of us worked on this together.
You guys did it together.
And got this up and got it going.
And so the also the importance of all that coming into now artists. So especially for artists, I want to touch on that point on how you think artists should be jumping into this new technology, especially if they want to get their work out. Most of them want to get their work out, try to sell it, things like that, make a career out of it. How do you see the augmented reality, virtual reality, all this type of new technology, especially like the NFT stuff and everything on? How do you see all that impacting artists and helping out artists?
Yeah, so I know that that there's a lot of artists in town who are starting to look to like dip their toes, and I've seen Diego's pieces like going up.
Well, before we touch into all that, like kind of explain like in your terms, like what is NFTs for those artists that don't really know, like and how it benefits these artists.
Yeah, so I mean, NFTs, the way that I actually look at this, and it stands for non-fungible token, and it's tied to Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, all these things are still kind of hard to understand, but it's basically a token that says that you own this and you can buy and sell it. It's something that was never available really for digital artists. So when you're a digital artist and you have you were always looking at like painters and people like that who have like these actual things that can be bought and put on a wall, and that person owns that. And then when that artist becomes famous, they could turn around and they could sell it for more money. It becomes this asset. Digital artists really had no way to do that. It's like, what are you gonna sell your JPEG, and then somebody buys your JPEG? How do they prove that they own it? And if they can prove that they own it, how are they going to keep people from just right clicking and saving it and having it themselves anyway? So what this ends up becoming is an ownership system of art in a sense. So you buy a piece, you can literally say, I own that JPEG, and you could also trade it for crypto money, and so it's really putting digital artists for the first time in a place where they can actually do something where their work has value other than how many likes can I get on Instagram, right? Or who's going to see this work and actually hire me or commission me to, because that's always been the goal, right?
Just trying to get paid.
Get commission, find some way to get paid for it. Without other people stealing it from you.
And how does this new space like impact or change that for artists?
So now, I mean, for the first time, I've seen artists who basically made a living like just doing tutorials and stuff like that. Now all of a sudden they're like, wait, I could sell my artwork, I could sell my animations, I could sell things that I've been working on, not just. So now the work that you do in the spare time because you're doing it because you love it, not because somebody's hiring you to do it, you can now get paid for that if you get a market out there and get it for yourself. I have a few NFTs right now that are out there that I just kind of sitting on, and I haven't been promoting them. I want to kind of build more of a library and then start to get stuff out there and sell. But it's not my focus right now because unfortunately my focus is on the other side of things. It's like, what are clients asking me to do?
Exactly. And what are some of the big projects that have really taken off for you? And then I also kind of want to jump into maybe some like sacrifices, maybe some mistakes that you've done, things like that can also help artists and like kind of have them not fall in those same steps, and maybe kind of like giving like a piece of advice for them that kind of says, I went through this is what I learned. Watch out for this, especially if they're getting into digital art or technology or in the VR industry or augmented reality. Like, what do they should expect, and what have you learned throughout the whole pathway of going through all that?
Yeah. So, so what was the first question actually? The first one was,
it's like, what is it that what have you struggled with getting into all this, and then like what have you learned from it that can really help out another artist that's probably pursuing the same industry as them?
Yeah, I mean, I would say one of my my biggest struggles is coming out of that place where I knew I had a steady paycheck, and then going into the place that's a little more of an adventure, where you don't know where the next one's coming from. You might get paid more, but not. But I would say, especially if you're still young, like really use that time to just throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks, and make mistakes.
Exactly.
When I was working full time for a place, fortunately, some of those places that I worked with allowed me to learn while I was working and make mistakes while I was doing. Now there's just so many more resources, and if there's something that appeals to you, run out and try and learn it. Like just even if it's just spend a whole weekend on one thing just to get it down.
And in today's world, it's kind of just easier now, because now you do have everything. When you were growing up, you had nothing. You had to figure out everything on your own, as you said. And so it's like now you have all the tools necessary to make something happen. And so also, what sacrifices did you have to really make? Whether it's like, maybe I would tell artists, like, maybe you had to like let go of your family for a little bit to pursue what you wanted to do. What sacrifice did you have to go in order to keep going in your pathway that you wanted to pursue?
One of my biggest sacrifices, and this is when I decided to actually leave New York to spend more time with my family. So my wife, my kids that I have, and just trying to balance that. New York was quite a commute. So I got to the point where I was like, well, maybe we could start my own company. And I did this with 2 other partners. And we had some really, it was a rough start.
Yeah.
Then we had some great years after that. And it got rough again. And it really just, it's the ups and downs. But I'd say, like, at that point, the sacrifice was, I ended up losing my house. My mortgage was $4,000 a month. There's no way I'm doing that, starting up my own company, right? Yeah. So, and ended up losing my house. But that sacrifice in itself, to be able to be in a place where I was working closer to home and spending more time with my family, was totally worth it. Totally worth it. And so it really just becomes a balance of what's important to you. Yeah. And there's times now that I know I spend a lot more time working than I should.
How do you stay true to your passion, like yourself?
Stay true to my passion and to myself.
Into what you're doing in your project, especially. Like, how do you stay motivated to keep going at them?
I try and treat every project like it's going to be the best thing that I'm doing.
Okay, awesome.
And to step back, and this is just an important thing from any artist, to be able to step back and look at it critically and be like, okay, if this was somebody else's work, what would I be judgmental about on this? Yeah. And then go fix that thing, Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so for that, like, I would say I usually get projects, I can do the first 90% of a project in half the time, and half of the time, and spend the other half of the time doing that last 10%. Yeah. But I think it always makes a difference. I think if you take pride in your work, you try and have a degree of excellence to it, and don't be afraid to ask other people. Yeah. Like, hey, what's wrong with this?
Mm-hmm. Like, get your feedback.
What stands out to you? Yeah. Like, don't be afraid to do that. So.
And where do you see kind of the whole digital space going in within the next 3 years in your industry that you're in, the technology industry? Yeah. How do you see that evolving, especially for artists and helping out artists in the next 5 years or so? Being from what you see from growing up and everything building up and evolving.
Yeah, I think this is a good time to get into 3D design.
Yeah.
It's a good time to get into even learning Unreal Engine as a game engine, Unity as a game engine, like to learn the mechanics and stuff of there, because what I'm seeing is VR is becoming more and more accessible now, whereas before it was expensive and you had to get. Now for $300 you can set yourself up with VR. I bought my dad a VR set so that he lives in Nashville. I bought my dad a VR set so that he and I can play miniature golf together, even though we're thousands of miles away.
And that's just so crazy to even talk about that. It's way back then you could even jump on a FaceTime call, and now you could play golf together virtually. It's crazy.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I mean, one of the biggest one of the biggest things that stood out to me with VR, and I have the Oculus Quest. It's like $300 at Best
Like a
Buy.
Walmart or something, yeah.
Yeah, anywhere. And one of the biggest things that stood out to me, I used to be a big poker fan.
Yeah.
So I used to play video poker all the time on my iPad or whatever. But now it's like putting this on and standing across the table, like sitting across the table, like I'm sitting from you.
Yeah.
Learning people's tells because you could see how much they hesitate or if they're going through their chips like this. Or and it's like, but that's a whole other world. And now we're in that world where we can be present to people who aren't present. I do a lot of photography as well, like 360 photography. And I remember when I first got this camera, it was a 3D 360 camera. And my friend said to me, man, I wish I had that when my aunt was still alive, because just to go back into her living room and watch her play piano again would just, that would be amazing. It would be like one of those memories that you'd want to keep forever, you know? And I thought about that. I'm like, yeah, and so now I start to think about that. Like, where are places that people would want to be present? What are memories that you'd want to record? And so I've been starting to do that with 360 capturing, because then you could put this headset on and you're there.
Relive it and things like that. Yeah.
So, so there's that. There's experiencing experiences that you can't otherwise. There's a lot of implications for that with, handicapped people, for instance. People even people with learning disabilities, things like that. Through COVID, we've seen teachers having a hard time reaching kids, but this is a technology that would allow kids to be in the same classroom as the teachers.
Especially during the pandemic, that technology had a big impact in keeping the world functioning in general.
The whole world changed.
Yeah.
Right.
So how was the pandemic for you then? What did you adjust to and everything during the pandemic?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So right at the beginning of the pandemic, this is just an example. There was a project that I was starting to work on with IBM, which was going to be shown over at Cannes in France. Pandemic hit. And we were freaking out. We're like, that's it. We're not going to be able to do this thing anymore. But then they came back and they said, you know what? Like, because of the pandemic, I think we need this more. We're just going to pivot how we're using it. And instead of it being a touch screen that people go up to, we're going to use it for our sales force to show. So that was like my first clue that things are changing. The people are starting to think differently about everything. There was, Facebook had developed this technology even before they had the Quest. They had their original Oculus, and they had a technology in there where you could be an avatar and you can call somebody on Facebook Messenger, and they'll see your avatar, and you as your avatar could talk to them. And you might be talking like that, but you see them on a huge screen in front of your face, and you can show them photos like, oh, did I show you this? And I literally
you can pull them up and everything.
Yeah, hold them up and stuff like that. And then that disappeared. Got rid of it. But now I think that's what they're starting to try and get back. So if you look at their technologies right now, there's Horizon. They're calling it Horizon. They have Horizon workspaces and things like that. That's going to put people back in the same room together. So I would encourage artists to, if they want to get into these things that are going that way, there's going to be virtual museums. There's going to be virtual spaces.
Even virtual galleries where they can display their stuff. Yeah.
There's even going to be real galleries. I shot a few galleries over at UTEP in 360 that are able to be toured through VR. But artists starting out now, it's cheap to get started. The tools that I'm using are expensive, but Blender is a 3D software that can do anything that all the other ones can do, and it's free. Unreal Engine is free as long as you're not making more than $1 million on your project, which most artists aren't.
Yeah, at that point, I wouldn't use that free software.
Yeah, exactly. And then Unity as well. There's you can get started in Unity for free. I would actually recommend Unreal Engine just because they seem to be making more leaps and bounds with the realism and stuff like that as far as virtual reality is concerned. And then not only that, what's also free. Making augmented reality for Snapchat is totally free. Making it for Facebook is totally free. It's a software called Spark AR, and that's what they're using. And from there, you can make it for Instagram as well. So for both of them, and it's just give it a shot. Like if you're interested in that, if you like playing like with face filters and you want to know how they're made, like go in there, watch a few tutorials, make your own. And then just
see
just
what
play
happens.
with it.
Yeah, 'cause it's just a whole different world we're entering, and so you just kind of have to also adjust to it, or else you're just kind of get lost in a way. That's how I feel. Like if you don't jump into learning it now, it's just going to expand so much later on that you're going to be completely lost. And so I also want to get your idea of like, what do you see as the pros and cons in entering that space of the whole new digital era and technology and stuff like that?
I would say the pros of it is that's where the world's going, right? So and as the world's going that way, that's probably
like the trend,
something that you would kind of want to go along on that. The cons are it's a time suck, just like anything else. And it's like, there are days when I just want to maybe sit back and become a farmer.
Honestly, sometimes I feel like that too.
It's like, can I just, have a ranch somewhere where I don't have any computers or any electronics?
Just live.
And I'm not having to tell the kids to get off of theirs and,
Well, how do you see that? Like, how do you see, because a lot of parents are always telling their kids like, hey, get off your phone, get off of this. But like, in a different aspect of it, it's like they should kind of be on their phones and things like that. Like, how do you see that?
It's such a hard balance, and there is no black and white there. Because the fact is, like, my daughter, for instance, will be on her phone or on, her computer like all the time, but yet at the same time, she's also drawing on her iPad and doing art and doing, and it's like, it's like,
that's a new reality.
It's the reality right now, and there, of course, there's things out there that as a parent I don't want her to be exposed to, but at the same time, there are things out there that I do want her to be exposed to, and to, because she's going to be the generation that's coming up with the new ideas that go even further, So I know it's tough. It's a tough balance. For sure.
And so what's also, I guess that last question I was going to ask you is, what do you know now in your whole industry that you wish you would have known when you first got started? And I know that could probably be a big question for you.
No, I mean, there's a few things.
You can name a few. Go for it.
A few things.
It's just more added value to whoever's listening right here.
Well, there's a few things that I guess would go into line with, oh man, if I only bought Bitcoin when my buddy was like, it's $300. I'm like, I don't have $300.
And now it's like, you would have for sure had $300.
62,000,
62,000, it's crazy.
And so there's things like that. There are ideas that I had that I was like, man, one day I'm going to get to this and I'm going to do it, that somebody else ended up doing. And, I'm not to give any specifics, but a lot of times if you have those ideas are there for a reason, especially if you find yourself going for like maybe 3 weeks still passionate about that idea. Just do it. Don't make excuses. Don't spend your time playing video games instead or whatever, just figure out how to make it happen. Find people to hold you accountable to it. Like, how's that thing going? Are you still going? Do you need help with something? Like if you could find a good partner that's going to keep you accountable and keep pushing, and then you don't have to worry because you will be the first to market,
And then that one piece of advice that you want to give out, or something that you received that really helped you kind of keep going in your industry or in life in general, like what would that one piece be?
Yeah, well, I had said earlier that, like the world needs more people who have come alive. And I know it's tough in this day and age where there's this balance between trying to make a living and trying to live, right? So I guess my advice would be to, oh man, I don't want to say follow your passion. How many people say follow your passion? Everybody answers that question this way, right? Like, follow your passion.
Do what you love.
But, I would say more follow the nudges that you get. Like, kind of like what I just said, like if you feel like something is wrong and going a wrong direction, not because people are telling you it's wrong, but if you get that gut feeling like, yeah, you know what, this isn't the direction, maybe it's not the direction. But if you get that gut feeling that you're like, yeah, you know what, this could be life-changing, not just for me, but for others.
Right.
You know, how can I use my gifts in a way that are going to help my community, those around me, and if you're religious, to help God and His community. But if you could focus your attention on those things that are not just going to lift you up, but lift others up,
right,
then that's really where it's at. There's a saying, a rising tide lifts all ships.
Yeah.
If you could figure out a way to use your talents to help others, and it's something you're passionate about, then go for it. There's no reason not to.
There's no con in that either. Yeah, to just help others. And I feel like that's where the new digital age is going. It's just trying to help other people stay connected and, relive, like how you said earlier, like just those memories of like that you never wanted to lose and keep them there together and all that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that's possibly one of the biggest benefits from the pros and cons is like you just get to keep those memories alive with you. And just in a digital space, in a digital world, which is pretty nice to see. And then the last thing I wanted to ask you is like, if somebody does want to work with you, reach out to you, where can they find you, things like that, where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so my Instagram is probably the social media that I keep up with the most.
And I forgot to ask you too, like how important do you think it is for anybody to be on social media?
To be on social media? Yeah. I've made if for nothing else, like social media is probably the biggest venue that you have to show your work, and it's free, and you just do it. And then even more so, like if you're paying for it, like if you have something that you really want people to know, then pay for it. Send it out there. It's not going to hurt, and you get like all the analytics of who looked at it and who didn't. But my Instagram is also where between Instagram, Discord, and things like that, I've actually met like a lot of like-minded artists from like all over the country, all over the world.
Especially Discord, yeah.
Especially like watching like as NFTs blew up, like everybody's running around like a chicken with their head cut off. Mm-hmm. But you have like all these friends and connections, and you're seeing them succeed, and it's really cool thing. My Instagram is iFisher. That's the eye on your face, Fisher like a fisherman. Yeah. .4D. And then you could find me. I'm working out of this office. We're called the Creative Collaborators, and we're right over on Rio Grande, right by the corner of Rio Grande and Brown Street. It's 1305 Rio Grande. If you really want to talk to me, if you're interested in like animation or things like that, or you just want to swing by, come on by, ring the doorbell. Like I'm usually there during the work day, during the work week, all the time. My buddy Ruben owns the place, and we're actually trying to turn that place into a place for artists, people who are, both digital artists, musicians, things like that. I don't know if you know Frank and Gabe from the church have been using that as their space to meet with people now, and it's just been it's been cool, like just seeing that community kind of build, and it's brand new. So
and going back to like the very beginning is like I feel like that's what makes El Paso very special, is that we're a community just trying to help each other build up together. Yeah, because we're also a small city.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, it's like we're a medium-sized city. I mean, like what are we, number 20 in population in the country, somewhere around there. But it's for me, knowing that this city space-wise is pretty big, but everybody seems to know each other, or at least knows somebody who knows the person you're talking about, right? So, and word gets around quick, so it's
So Eric, I appreciate you so much for coming on the show. And if there's anything else that you wanted to mention before we let you go or anything like that.
Well, let me mention, check out onecrazyyear.com. It has, it actually won the National Edward R. Murrow Award, which I'm told is a pretty prestigious thing to have happened.
And I saw it too. I looked into it. It's amazing.
I don't come from the TV world. Yeah. So take a look at that, and and like I said, drop by anytime. I'm open to meeting with you.
Awesome, Eric. I appreciate you so much. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the episode and listening to the, make sure you guys go check out Eric and stuff. We're also having Hipster Fest this Saturday, so if you guys want to go check that out, it'll be happening Saturday from 5 to 10. It'll be actually here at a Mano Gallery. So make sure you guys come by if you guys want to see like local vendors, musicians. We're also having a fashion show as well. So make sure you guys come check it out, and also make sure you guys go. We'll link his stuff down in our description and everything, so you guys go check out One Crazy Year. It's an amazing museum. I've seen it too. So we'll get you guys in the next one. Thank you so much.